Growing up on the south side of Chicago wasn't easy for the Smith brothers. As identical twins, they'd always had each other's backs, sharing everything from hand-me-down clothes to ambitious dreams. While other kids played video games after school, these brothers were busy taking apart old computers in their mom's garage, figuring out how they worked, and putting them back together. Their mom worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, but she always made time to check their homework and remind them that education was their ticket to a better life. The twins took those words to heart. They weren't just good students. They were the kind who stayed after class to learn more, who spent weekends in coding camps, and who turned their high school science projects into real business ideas. Fast forward 10 years, and their tech company, SmartShield Security, had become the talk of Silicon Valley. They'd created a security system that could be installed in any vehicle, making it virtually impossible to steal or misuse. The inspiration came from their own experiences. They'd seen too many people in their neighborhood lose their cars to theft, and they wanted to do something about it. Their big break came when a major car manufacturer decided to integrate their security system into their newest line of luxury vehicles. Suddenly, the brothers who used to share a cramped bedroom were being featured in tech magazines and giving speeches at industry conferences. But success hadn't changed them. They still lived modestly, worked hard, and remembered where they came from. The only extravagance they allowed themselves was their matching Porsche 911s. It wasn't about showing off. These cars represented every late night they'd spent coding, every investor meeting where people doubted them because of their age or background, and every obstacle they'd overcome together. The midnight blue and slate gray sports cars were identical except for their colors, just like the brothers themselves. They'd bought the cars on the same day, and in typical twin fashion, they'd spent hours debating who would get which color. Their employees had watched with amusement as they finally settled it with a game of rock, paper, scissors, best out of 5, of course. The whole office had gathered around, cheering and laughing as these brilliant tech entrepreneurs acted just like the kids they used to be. What made these particular cars special wasn't just their sleek design or powerful engines, it was what the brothers had added to them. Being security experts, they'd installed their latest prototype systems in both vehicles. Every inch was covered by hidden cameras, every movement tracked by GPS, and every sound recorded by sensitive microphones. The data was continuously uploaded to secure servers, making these probably the most well-documented cars in the city. The brothers had learned early in life that being prepared wasn't paranoid, it was smart. They'd seen too many successful people in their neighborhood become targets, and they weren't going to let their hard work be undermined by anyone. But they never imagined how soon their precautions would prove necessary, or how their technology would end up serving a purpose far beyond simple vehicle security. That sunny Sunday morning started like any other. The brothers were heading to their mom's house for their weekly family breakfast, a tradition they'd kept up no matter how busy they got. She still made the same blueberry pancakes they'd loved as kids, and they still playfully argued over who got the crispiest bacon. They always drove together, their Porsches making a striking pair on the quiet weekend streets. Little did they know that this ordinary morning was about to become anything but ordinary. Their preparations, their technology, and their unshakable bond as brothers were about to be put to the test in a way they never expected. But then again, they'd always believed that success wasn't just about being smart or working hard, it was about being ready for whatever life threw at you. And they were about to prove just how ready they were. The morning sun glinted off the polished surfaces of the 2 Porsches as they cruised down the quiet suburban streets. The brothers were in no hurry, enjoying their weekly drive to their mom's house, looking forward to those homemade blueberry pancakes that somehow tasted better than any 5-star restaurant breakfast. The older twin, by exactly 3 minutes, as he never failed to remind his brother, was leading the way in his midnight blue Porsche. Through his rearview mirror, he could see his brother's slate gray car following close behind, both vehicles moving smoothly like a perfectly choreographed dance. They'd driven this route so many times they could probably do it with their eyes closed, though of course they never would. Success hadn't made them reckless. That's when they noticed the police cruiser. It had been parked in a side street, and as soon as they passed, it pulled out behind them. The brothers exchanged glances through their mirrors. They'd been in situations like this before. Their mom had taught them exactly what to do: stay calm, be polite, and remember that everything can be sorted out with patience and proper documentation. Officer Thompson watched the two luxury cars from his cruiser, his dashboard computer already running their plates. Despite both vehicles being driven perfectly within the speed limit, despite their proper signaling and careful adherence to traffic rules, he flipped on his lights. The brothers, as they'd been taught, immediately signaled and pulled over safely to the side of the road, one behind the other. The older brother reached for his glove compartment, already getting his registration and insurance ready. Through his side mirror, he could see his twin doing the same thing. They'd been through this drill before. It was almost routine at this point. But something felt different this time. The way the officer approached, his hand already resting on his weapon, his stance aggressive rather than cautious, sent a chill down both brothers' spines. Officer Thompson's body camera recorded every moment as he approached the first car. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate, each one carrying the weight of authority he seemed too eager to exercise. "License and registration," he barked, not even bothering with the usual good morning that was standard procedure. The older brother handed over his documents with steady hands. "Good morning, officer," he said calmly, his voice clear and respectful despite the officer's tone. "May I ask why we've been pulled over?" The officer ignored the question, snatching the documents and studying them with exaggerated suspicion. "Stay in the vehicle," he ordered, before walking back to his cruiser. The brothers watched in their mirrors as he spent an unusually long time running their information. When Officer Thompson returned, his demeanor had somehow become even more confrontational. "Step out of the vehicle," he commanded, his hand still hovering near his weapon. "Both of you, out of your cars, now." The brothers complied smoothly, their movements slow and deliberate. They'd practiced this too. How to move in a way that wouldn't spook nervous officers, how to keep their hands visible at all times, how to maintain their dignity while following instructions that shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. "These vehicles have been reported stolen," Officer Thompson declared, though both brothers knew this was impossible. They had all the documentation, including the original purchase papers from the dealership, saved digitally on their phones and in hard copy in their glove compartments. "Officer, there must be some mistake," the younger twin said calmly, reaching slowly for his phone. "I have the purchase documentation right here, and—" "Don't move," Thompson shouted, his hand now fully on his weapon. "I'm calling for backup to impound these vehicles. You can sort it out at the station." The brothers shared another look. They knew what was happening. They'd heard stories like this before, seen similar scenarios play out in their community. But they were prepared. Their car's hidden cameras were recording everything, the GPS tracking was active, and their security system was silently uploading every bit of data to their secure servers. As they stood there in the morning sun, watching Officer Thompson radio for backup, they remained outwardly calm. Inside, though, they were already planning their next moves. Years of building their security company had taught them the value of documentation, of having systems in place, of being ready for anything. They had learned early that the best way to fight injustice wasn't with anger or force, it was with preparation, technology, and an unshakable belief in the power of truth. Little did Officer Thompson know, but his actions were being recorded from multiple angles, his words captured by high-quality microphones, and his every move tracked by systems he couldn't see. The brothers stood quietly, respecting his authority for now, knowing that sometimes the best response to abuse of power was to let it play out while gathering evidence. They had built their success on solving problems with intelligence rather than confrontation, and this situation would be no different. As more patrol cars began arriving on the scene, the brothers maintained their composed demeanor. They knew this was just the beginning of what would become a much bigger story, one that would have consequences far beyond this morning traffic stop. The question wasn't if justice would be served, but how soon and how thoroughly their preparation would pay off. The backup units arrived within minutes, their sirens breaking the peaceful Sunday morning silence. 3 more patrol cars pulled up, their lights flashing against the gleaming surfaces of the Porsche twins. The whole scene seemed excessive for what should have been a routine traffic stop, and neighbors were starting to peek through their curtains at the commotion. Officer Thompson seemed to grow more confident with his colleagues present. He strutted between the 2 sports cars, making a show of his authority. These vehicles matched the description of 2 stolen cars from the north side, he announced loudly, though he hadn't mentioned this supposed theft report before. The brothers noticed how he was playing to his audience now, trying to justify his actions to the newly arrived officers. The younger brother spoke up again, his voice steady and clear. "Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but there's been a mistake. We own these cars. We bought them 6 months ago from Downtown Luxury Motors. We have all the documentation, including—" "If I want you to speak, I'll ask you to speak," Thompson cut him off sharply. He turned to one of the other officers. "Call for the tow trucks. We'll impound both vehicles." The older brother pulled out his phone, careful to keep his movements slow and visible. "Officer, I'm calling our lawyer. This is a clear violation of—" "Hand over your phones, both of you." Thompson's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "You can have them back after we sort this out at the station." The brothers complied, knowing their phones had already sent emergency alerts to their lawyer. They'd set up this system months ago, hoping they'd never need it. The alert included their current location, a live feed from their car's cameras, and automatic access to all their vehicle documentation. What happened next showed just how far Officer Thompson was willing to take his abuse of power. He ordered the brothers to sit on the cut-up while he began searching their vehicles, without consent, without a warrant, without probable cause. The other officers watched uncomfortably, some exchanging worried glances. This wasn't standard procedure, and they knew it. Inside the cars, Thompson rifled through everything he could find. He tossed aside the vehicle registration papers without reading them, ignored the insurance documentation, and seemed frustrated when he couldn't find anything suspicious. The brothers watched silently as their meticulously maintained vehicles were treated like crime scenes. "Pop the trunks," Thompson demanded. When the brothers didn't immediately comply, he added, "Now, or I'll add resisting an officer to your charges." The older brother spoke up, his voice firm but respectful. "Officer Thompson, yes, I can see your name tag. We do not consent to any searches of our vehicles. We've provided all necessary documentation to prove ownership. If you wish to proceed, we'd like our lawyer present." Thompson's face reddened. The use of his name, the calm assertion of rights. These weren't the responses he was used to. He grabbed his radio, speaking into it with barely contained anger. "Dispatch, I'm going to need to transport 2 suspects for questioning regarding the stolen vehicle case." One of the younger officers stepped forward, looking concerned. "Sir, have you run the VIN numbers? Maybe we should verify the theft report first." Thompson whirled on him. "Are you questioning my judgment, Officer Reed? I've been doing this job since before you were in high school. I know what I'm looking at here." The brothers caught that exchange, noting the young officer's name and his attempt to do the right thing. The hidden cameras caught it too. Every word, every gesture, every abuse of authority was being recorded and uploaded in real time. As if the situation couldn't get more surreal, that's when they heard the familiar ringtone of their mom's phone call. She was wondering why they were late for breakfast. The older brother called out politely, "Officer, our mother is expecting us. Could one of us at least answer to let her know we're okay?" Thompson's response was to turn up the radio in his patrol car, drowning out the ringtone. He then made a show of getting into the midnight blue Porsche, adjusting the seat like he owned it. "I'll drive this one to impound myself," he announced. "Mitchell, you take the gray one. The rest of you escort our suspects to booking." The brothers exchanged one more knowing look. Their mom had always taught them that patience was a virtue, that sometimes you had to let people reveal their true colors before justice could be served. As they were led to separate patrol cars, they stayed calm. Their car's security systems were doing their job, recording every moment, tracking every movement, building an airtight case with each passing minute. What Officer Thompson didn't realize as he sat behind the wheel of that midnight blue Porsche, admiring the leather interior and high-tech dashboard, was that he wasn't just sitting in a luxury car. He was sitting in the middle of the most sophisticated mobile surveillance system in the city. Every adjustment of the seat, every touch of the controls, every word he muttered under his breath, it was all being recorded, time-stamped, and uploaded to servers he couldn't access or erase. The brothers might have been headed to the police station instead of their mom's Sunday breakfast, but they weren't worried. They had learned long ago that the best defense against injustice wasn't just staying calm, it was being prepared. and they were more prepared than Officer Thompson could possibly imagine. What Officer Thompson didn't know as he pulled away from the curb in that gleaming midnight blue Porsche was that he was sitting in the middle of a technological masterpiece. The car wasn't just a luxury vehicle, it was a rolling testament to everything the brothers had learned about security over the years. Hidden in the rearview mirror was a 4K camera that captured every expression that crossed Thompson's face as he adjusted the seat and mirrors. Beneath the dashboard, microscopic sensors recorded every fingerprint he left on the steering wheel and controls. The brothers had designed these systems to be completely invisible. Even professional mechanics would have trouble spotting them. The car's GPS system wasn't just tracking location, it was mapping every turn, every speed change, every stop. And Thompson was definitely not heading toward the police impound lot. Instead, he was taking a route that led toward the wealthy part of town, where many officers lived in suburban comfort. Back at the brothers' office, their security system had already sprung into action. The moment Officer Thompson had first pulled them over, automatic alerts had gone out. Their lawyer, a tough-as-nails veteran of civil rights cases, was already reviewing the live feed while heading to the police station. Their system's artificial intelligence had already compiled a preliminary report of every violation of procedure, every misconduct, every moment that would make a jury shake their heads in disbelief. But the real genius of their security system wasn't just in its recording capabilities. The brothers had built in layers of protection that went far beyond simple surveillance. Every time Thompson touched something in the car, the system was building a profile. His fingerprints were being scanned and compared against law enforcement databases. His voice patterns were being analyzed. Even his driving style was being documented and compared against known patterns of police misconduct. In the gray Porsche, Officer Mitchell was having second thoughts. Unlike Thompson, he'd been gentle with the vehicle, treating it with respect. He'd also noticed something odd. The car seemed to be running a bit too smoothly for a supposedly stolen vehicle. His years of experience told him something wasn't adding up, but he kept his doubts to himself for now. Meanwhile, at the police station, the brothers sat calmly in separate interview rooms. They weren't worried about their cars. They were more concerned about their mom, who must have been frantic by now. But they knew their security system would have sent her an automated message, letting her know they were safe and handling a situation. The younger brother smiled slightly as he watched the clock on the wall. He knew that right about now, their lawyer would be walking into the station. She would have already reviewed all the footage, compiled the evidence, and prepared preliminary papers for a civil rights case that would make headlines. Back in the midnight blue Porsche, Officer Thompson was getting comfortable. He'd turned on the radio, enjoying the premium sound system. He'd even opened the glove compartment, rifling through the papers inside without bothering to read them. What he didn't notice was the tiny light blinking on the car's digital display, a light that looked just like any other dashboard indicator, but was actually confirming that every move he made was being uploaded to secure servers. The brothers hadn't just built a security system, they'd created a web of accountability. Every piece of technology in their cars worked together like a symphony, each component playing its part in documenting the truth. The cameras weren't just recording, they were analyzing behavior patterns. The GPS wasn't just tracking location, it was building a case. In the brothers' office, their main security screen had lit up with activity. The system was doing exactly what it was designed to do, protect not just the cars, but the truth itself. It was cataloging every violation, unauthorized use of a vehicle, deviation from official police procedures, misuse of authority. The evidence was mounting with every passing minute. Their employees, who had access to the security feeds, watched in amazement as the system did its work. This was what their company had been built for, not just to protect vehicles, but to protect people's rights. The brothers had always said that technology should serve justice, and now they were proving it. The car's systems had even picked up Thompson's phone conversations. As he drove, he'd made several calls, each one digging his hole deeper. He'd called a friend about the sweet bride he'd picked up. He'd talked about how he might take care of the paperwork to make the impound stick. Every word was captured, time-stamped, and added to the growing mountain of evidence. What made this situation particularly ironic was that Thompson had no idea he was participating in what would become a textbook example of how technology could fight abuse of power. The brothers had designed their security system to be completely invisible while being thoroughly comprehensive. It wasn't just about catching someone doing wrong, it was about creating a record so complete, so irrefutable, that justice would be inevitable. As Officer Thompson turned onto a street that definitely wasn't on the way to any police impound lot, the car's systems continued their silent work. Every turn was logged, every word recorded, every action documented. The truth was building itself, piece by piece, in a way that no amount of badge-waving or official reports could later deny. The brothers knew that what was happening now went beyond just their cars or this one incident. They had created something that could change how power itself was held accountable. As they sat in those interview rooms, waiting patiently, they knew that justice wasn't just coming, it was already in motion, carried forward by streams of data, undeniable evidence, and the power of preparation meeting opportunity. Their mom, who had been quietly watching all this unfold, finally spoke up. "My boys have always been clever," she said, her voice full of pride. "But what makes me proudest is that they use their smarts to help people. They don't just make fancy gadgets, they make things that protect people, that make the world a little bit fairer." The captain was now on the phone with Internal Affairs, his voice grave as he described the situation. The brothers didn't need to hear the conversation to know what was coming. They had built their security system to be thorough enough that once its evidence was revealed, the consequences would be inevitable. Outside the station, they could hear a car pulling up. Thompson had finally arrived in the midnight blue Porsche. The camera showed him sitting in the car for a long moment, probably trying to figure out how it had all gone so wrong so quickly. What he didn't realize was that even now, the car was recording his every move, his every word, his every frustrated sigh. The brothers shared a look as they heard Thompson's footsteps approaching the captain's office. They had built their security system hoping they'd never need to use it like this. But now that they had, they knew this incident would do more than just right a single wrong. It would show everyone that technology could be a shield against injustice, that preparation and innovation could protect not just property, but human dignity itself. Officer Thompson's world was crumbling around him as he sat in the chair across from the captain's desk. Gone was the swagger, the arrogance, the sense of untouchable authority. Now he just looked small, defeated, as he watched video after video of his own misconduct playing on the screen before him. "I can explain," he started, but the words died in his throat as the captain held up a hand. "The time for explanations is over, Thompson. We're looking at multiple violations here. Unauthorized seizure of vehicles, deviation from standard procedures, abuse of authority." The captain's voice was heavy with disappointment and anger. "And that's just from today." The brothers' lawyer cleared her throat. "Actually, there's more." She tapped her tablet, and new windows popped up on the screen. "Our system has been analyzing Officer Thompson's patrol patterns over the last 6 months. We've identified at least 27 similar incidents where luxury vehicles were pulled over without cause, all driven by minority owners." The younger brother spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "We built our security system not just to protect our cars, but to protect everyone. The artificial intelligence doesn't just record incidents, it analyzes patterns. It can identify systematic behavior that might otherwise go unnoticed." Thompson's union representative had arrived by now, but even he looked uncomfortable as he reviewed the evidence. The brothers' security system had created such a comprehensive record that there was no room for denial, no space for the usual excuses. The system flagged something else interesting, the older brother added, pulling up another screen. "Every time Officer Thompson ran our plates, the database showed clear ownership records. He chose to ignore them. The system recorded each query and his subsequent actions, showing a clear pattern of deliberate misconduct." Outside the captain's office, word was spreading through the department. Officers gathered in small groups, watching the security footage that was now being reviewed by Internal Affairs. The young Officer Reed had become something of an impromptu tech expert, explaining to his colleagues how the brothers' security system worked. "See, it's not just about catching bad behavior," Reed explained, pointing to the multiple camera angles. "It's about preventing it. If every patrol car had this kind of accountability built in, think how many problems we could avoid." The brothers' mom sat quietly in the corner, still holding her now empty picnic basket. She'd raised her boys to stand up for what was right, but to do it smart. Watching them now, seeing how they'd used their skills to create something that could make real change, filled her heart with pride. Thompson's phone kept buzzing. News was spreading fast. Other officers who had worked with him over the years were suddenly very interested in reviewing their own past cases. The brother's lawyer was already fielding calls from other victims of similar incidents, all asking about the security system that had finally brought truth to light. "Here's what's going to happen," the captain announced, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Thompson, you're suspended effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Your badge and gun now." As Thompson slowly placed his badge on the desk, the brothers exchanged a look. This wasn't about revenge for them, it was about change. Their security system hadn't just caught one officer's misconduct. It had exposed a whole pattern of behavior that needed to change. The police union representative was busy making calls, looking increasingly worried. The evidence was too clear, too comprehensive to fight. The brothers' security system had created an unbreakable chain of proof from the first moment of the traffic stop to Thompson's attempted joy ride in the Porsche. "We'd like to make a proposal," the older brother said, pulling up a presentation on his tablet. "Our company would be willing to work with the department to implement similar security systems in all patrol cars. Not to punish officers, but to protect both them and the public." 6 months later, the police department looked very different. The brothers sat in their company's conference room, surrounded by newspaper headlines that told the story of change. "Police Department adopts revolutionary security system," read one. "Traffic complaints drop 70% after new technology implementation," proclaimed another. The story of their encounter with Officer Thompson had spread far beyond their city. Police departments across the country were reaching out, wanting to learn more about the security system that had turned one incident of misconduct into a catalyst for nationwide change. "You wouldn't believe how many calls we get every day," the older brother told a group of visiting police chiefs. They were touring the company's facility, seeing firsthand how the security systems worked. "But the best calls are from officers themselves. They tell us they feel safer, more confident doing their jobs knowing everything is documented." The younger brother was showing Officer Reed, now promoted to sergeant, the latest updates to the system. After that Sunday morning incident, Reed had become one of their strongest advocates within the department, helping other officers understand that accountability wasn't about punishment, it was about protection. "The best part," Reed explained to his colleagues, "is that complaints against officers have dropped dramatically. When people know they're being recorded, everyone behaves better, both officers and civilians. It's like having a neutral witness present at all times." Their mom still made Sunday breakfast for them every week, but now she often had company. Officers who were early adopters of the new system would stop by, bringing their families, sharing stories about how the technology had made their jobs easier, safer, more transparent. "You know what makes me happiest?" Their mom said one Sunday morning, watching her kitchen full of people enjoying her pancakes. "It's not just that my boys created something successful. It's that they created something that brings people together, that helps make things right." The brothers' security company had grown exponentially. They'd hired more staff, expanded their offices, but kept their core mission the same, using technology to protect people and promote justice. They'd even started a foundation that provided legal assistance to victims of similar incidents, funded by the success of their security systems. "Remember that morning?" the older brother asked his twin as they watched new patrol cars being fitted with their technology. "When Thompson pulled us over. Who would have thought that one bad morning would lead to all this?" The younger brother smiled, remembering. "Well, like Mom always says, sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best changes if you're prepared to make them happen." Their lawyer had become a regular partner, helping them navigate the complex world of police reform and technology implementation. She'd seen too many cases where justice was denied because of lack of evidence. Now she was helping write new policies that made their security systems standard equipment in law enforcement agencies. "It's not just about catching bad behavior anymore," she explained to a group of law students who were studying the Thompson case. "It's about preventing it. When people know they're being held accountable, they make better choices." The Internal Affairs Department had undergone its own transformation. With the new security systems in place, their job had shifted from investigating complaints to preventing them. They used the brothers' technology to identify potential problems before they became serious incidents. Officer Thompson's case had become a turning point. After his suspension and subsequent resignation, other officers who had similar complaints against them were given a choice: accept the new accountability measures or find different work. Most chose to stay, recognizing that times were changing. The brothers' company had even started working with car manufacturers, integrating their security systems into new vehicles right from the factory. They knew that what happened to them could happen to anyone, and they wanted everyone to have the same protection they'd had. The best security isn't just about technology, the older brother often said in interviews. It's about creating a system where everyone, police and public alike, feels protected and respected. Their mom had kept the picnic basket from that fateful Sunday morning. It sat in her kitchen as a reminder, not of the injustice they'd faced, but of how they'd turned that moment into a movement for change. The young officers who now went through police academy training learned about the Thompson case as an example of how not to use their authority. But more importantly, they learned about the brothers' response, how they'd used intelligence, preparation, and technology to create positive change instead of seeking revenge. You know what's funny? The younger brother said one day, looking out over their expanded office space, "We started out wanting to protect cars from being stolen. Now we're helping protect something much bigger: people's rights, officers' reputations, the whole idea of justice itself." Their security system had become more than just cameras and sensors. It had become a symbol of how technology could be used to make the world a little bit fairer, a little bit safer, a little bit better for everyone. And every Sunday morning, when the brothers drove their Porsches to their mom's house for breakfast, they drove past police cars equipped with their technology. They'd created something that changed not just their own story, but the stories of countless others. And that, they agreed, was worth all the pancakes in the world.